Welcome back to Hardball. Late this afternoon, President Trump defended his decision to pull troops out of northern Syria despite a looming Turkish attack on Syrian Kurdish forces.
I told President Erdogan, it's going to be your responsibility. Now, really, who's responsible? It's really Russia, it's Turkey, it's Iran, it's Iraq, and it's Syria, and anybody else in the neighborhood. We did a great service to the world. Right now, we're at a position where if Turkey does anything out of what they should be doing, we will hit them so hard in the economy. Let them take care of it. We're policing. We're not fighting, we're policing. We're not a police force.
According to the New York Times, quote, if Turkey moves against the Kurds, the Syrian Democratic Forces could abandon camps to fight the Turks, potentially allowing some 10,000 captured Islamic State fighters to escape. For more, I'm joined by Richard Engel, NBC News chief foreign correspondent. He is live in Turkey. And David Phillips, former senior advisor at the State Department. Thanks to both of you. Richard, let me just start with you on the ground. We were playing just before you joined us here, dire predictions of what is now to come for the Kurds. Just set the scene on the ground in the region in terms of what the expectations are now and what is happening right now that this has been announced and begun.
Well, I would just ask you to play that clip that we just heard from President Trump again, because that kind of encapsulates everything. I don't understand a word he was saying, and I've been working in the Middle East for over 20 years. We're policing Russia. We've done a great service, Iran. I have no idea what he's talking about, what kind of policy he's advocating. Is that a green light to Turkey to go in and clear out the Kurds? Last night, President Trump had a conversation with the Turkish President Erdogan. After the conversation, the White House issued a statement that strongly suggested that if Turkish troops move into northern Syria against the Kurds there, against U.S. allies who've lost more than 10,000 people, men and women fighting alongside U.S. Special Operations Forces, that the U.S. would have no problem that it would stand aside and allow that offensive to take place. A green light. All day today, we were on kind of a war footing. Even Turkey thought it was about to begin. And then President Trump is walking it back. There have been some private briefings saying, well, if Turkey goes too far, I'll destroy their economy. So it went from a green light to an amber light, all encapsulated in that impossible to understand statement of policy that you just played at the beginning. People here have no idea what the U.S. position is, no idea if there are any red lines, if there are any green lights, or what to do. And if you're a U.S. ally, like the Kurds, whose lives depend on American friendship for your survival, I think right now you're very, very nervous, and I can tell you we've been speaking to them right now. They're nervous, they're worried they're going to be betrayed, they're not sure who is in charge and what President Trump says when he sits down, picks up the phone, and speaks to other world leaders.
David, in terms of the politics that sort of shape this here domestically, I see two things kind of happening here. I think Americans are absorbing the sorts of comments from across the political spectrum today about how loyal the Kurds have been to the United States, the idea of you do not want to betray them, what would happen if they were given up right now. With it, when the president used that word police force, I do know typically when you look at polling on sort of military involvement overseas, there does tend to be an aversion to sending American troops into a lot of situations overseas, frankly. Is there a way to get an American presence out of Syria that does not give up the Kurds?
So there's a Kurdish adage which says the Kurds have no friend but the mountains. In Syria, the U.S. has no friend but the Kurds. 11,000 Kurds were killed, 22,000 were injured, fighting at our behest against ISIS. ISIS would not have been defeated. The caliphate would not have been defeated without Kurdish participation. So this sends a message in Syria, in the region, but also worldwide. Who's going to go to war with the United States the next time we need a friend and ally when we treat our allies in Syria, the Kurds, the way we have?
So what would you say to somebody who says, that's a very good point. In the United States, if that is going to be the consequence of this, the United States shouldn't do this, but the United States still needs to get out of Syria. Is there a way to reconcile those two impulses?
Yeah, the Syrian Kurds need a train and equip program so they can defend themselves. Left to a fair fight, the Kurds would defeat Turkey. But Turkey has heavy armor, they have air power. In December of last year, the Kurds attacked a town called Afrin. The Kurds tried to defend themselves against Turkey. They were unable to. Hundreds were killed. They fled east of the Euphrates River. So the U.S. needs to have an exit strategy for Syria, but that means a political solution that decentralizes power, gives local control to the Kurds over their government, their economy. If we don't do that, it's just a formula for further instability and conflict in Syria, and the Kurds will be left out in the cold, and so will our interests.
Richard, quickly, we showed all of those Republicans who are typically loyal to the president speaking out so forcefully on this today. That political reality of potentially there being a veto-proof majority in Congress to take action here, is that going to have an effect?
Well, the one thing that President Trump has made clear in what is a totally chaotic and apparently improvised strategy that he has not communicated clearly, because people here, both the Turks and the Kurds, do not know what is going to happen next. The Turks don't know, do they have this green light to go carry out an offensive? And do the Kurds know, have they just been betrayed and they're about to be massacred? Do they start needing to dig foxholes right now? The one thing that is clear is that President Trump wants out of this and is happy to abandon the people who lost over 10,000 fighters fighting against ISIS. And there are many Americans who do not want to see that happen, think it's bad for the U.S. image. So I think that's why he's walking it back. And maybe well, I know the Kurds are hoping that he will get distracted again, move on to another subject, and that this will pass.
All right, Richard Engel in Turkey, David Phillips, thank you to both of you.